We're live on YouTube, X, Rumble, about to be live on Rockfin. As soon as that go live button turns red and is clickable, and then we'll drive in. We'll drive in. I'm so dumb, I can't even say dive in. I'm going to drive into the show. What a retard I am. We'll dive into the show. Clickable. Okay, let's do it. I have some interesting stuff for you guys tonight. The October hoax, it's here, and Bret Baier of Fox News, he's lying about that admission that he made yesterday, last night, still talking about today, that he said he made a mistake during the interview with Kamala when it comes to playing a clip. He's lying about that, and I'm going to show you. I have the receipts, as they would say. This is the Propaganda Report. I'm Brad Binkley. Happy Friday evening to everyone. Share the show if you like it. If you like this show, share it with people to help the show grow. If you don't like this show, go kick rocks and shut your mouth. Before we get into the very interesting new tactical approach to some coordinated propaganda that's been going on the past couple of days, I want to let everybody know that the state of Georgia continues to be the focus of the 2024 election because Kamala Harris is going to be in Atlanta tomorrow. And as I always do, I've been trying to find out where exactly she'll be and what time she'll be there. I'm talking address and specific times because they keep the details of her campaign events and the events of anyone who is campaigning for her a tightly held secret. However, this time I've made a little bit of progress in advance because I've attended so many of these events through one of these organizing Harris groups that they sent me a thing asking me if I wanted to join them to help get out the vote for Kamala while she's here in Atlanta on Saturday. And of course I said, heck yeah, I'd love to do that, hoping that maybe I would get some of that inside information about the date and time. And guess what? I got an email shortly before the show that actually gives me some of those details that I haven't been privy to during the previous events. Let me read to you what they sent me here. Where is it? Okay, here's what it says. It says, you signed up for the Get Out the Vote rally in Atlanta with Vice President Harris. It then tells me that the event will be located at the following location, with that following location being private address. That's what it says. It will be held at private address, Atlanta 30315. I got a zip code. That narrows it down a little bit. That's more information than they've given us in the past. You know, that eliminates all the other possibilities. I can just drive around that whole zip code, knocking on doors of private addresses, saying, "Is Kamala in here? Is this the get out the vote thing?" Then you go to the next one until you find her. It then gives me a time for the event. It says that the event will be held at some point, anytime between 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. on Saturday, because Kamala's like an internet technician. They will be there to fix your internet between 3 and 8. Don't leave home or you'll miss your appointment. So, if you want to see Kamala tomorrow and you're in the Atlanta area, she will be somewhere in the 30315 zip code, sometime between the hours of 3 and 8 p.m. That's the Lakewood Heights area of Fulton County, 30315 is, which covers a 3-mile radius and 11 square miles, and it has an estimated population of 35,000 people with just under 16,000 homes and condos or houses and 8,000 apartments. So here's what we're looking at here. I think this is the question if we want to be able to help Kamala get out the vote tomorrow. Can I cover a 3-mile radius and search the private residences of 24,000 people within the 30315 zip code during a span of 5 hours? Can I find her in that time. And there's a lot of ground to cover. Also, a lot of work people have to do to help get out the vote for her. You really got to work for it. How can you have a get out the vote rally but not tell people where you're going to be and when? Seems to go against the whole idea of getting out the vote. Nevertheless, let's move on to the crazy stuff going on. I find this stuff really fascinating. This October hoax that has arrived. It is, let me take that back for a second. The reason that this is interesting to me, this new October hoax, is because there's a new tactic that the propagandists are using to, quote, fact check or debunk stuff, which just means lie, that I've actually read a lot about them talking about how they're going to use it. It's like a news literacy thing where they're like, let's try this thing and see if this is a better way to deceive people. And actually, I think it is pretty effective, especially the way that they're doing it. And the other reason that this is interesting to me is because this October hoax, while Fox News is trying to appear on the surface to be on the opposite side of their left-leaning counterparts, in actuality, they are the central role player who is responsible for not only getting this October hoax more attention, I mean, making it explode onto the news than the other networks really, they could have done combined. But they're also responsible for ensuring that a very provably false narrative that's being spread continues to persist and grow when they actually have and they own footage that if they just played it, it's less than 90 seconds total. If they just played it or made it easy to find, would completely collapse the entire false narrative that they are a central role player in propagating now. Not that we didn't know that Fox News was a controlled opposition, the flip side of the same coin, but it's very apparent here. And the hoax I'm referring to, I'm certain that you've heard it, is the enemy from within hoax. All over the news everywhere now. Couple variations of it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Kamala show you what the claim of the hoax is, and we'll start from there. I got a lot of clips. I find this stuff fascinating, really. I was like searching for all the source videos to try and, that's what they do. They play a montage of things that are all taken out of context and clipped, and then make it very, very hard to find the actual source videos, which contain the information leading up to the clips that provide the actual meaning and relevance of what the clip, of what the words that were said in the clip actually mean. Because if they make that stuff easy to find, then it makes it harder for them to lie about what they play in these out of context clips and montages if people can find the truth. Whatever. Here's Kamala. Gosh, she's just, I feel like it's like a really big joke. What's going on, guys? Just saw you guys in the chats. Chocolate sounds amazing. Bailey and hot. It does sound amazing, actually. It's kind of chilly out, so hot chocolate time. Oreo edibles. Stoner, it's perfect. I would like some Oreo edibles as well. Now let's get Kamala up on screen. Kamala, the sick joke that's being played against society, that this person is qualified. Like, I wouldn't want Kamala to go return a television I bought that didn't work properly. I wouldn't think she would be able to do it right. All right, here it is. Okay, Kamala has been doing this at her events for a few weeks now. Didn't blow up on the scene, this narrative lie, until the Fox News stuff a few days ago. But here is the basic lie, or the way the claim they're making works.
And so after all these years, we know who Donald Trump is. He is someone who will stop at nothing to claim power for himself. And you don't have to take my word for it. I've said for a while now, watch his rallies. Listen to his words. He tells us who he is. And he tells us what he would do if he is elected president.
So that is a very, very crucial factor of this false narrative. He tells us with his words who he is and what he will do. And then very slyly, I mean, this is a good propaganda effort they're doing here. Good, by good, I mean skilled.
So here tonight, I will show you one example of Donald Trump's worldview and intentions.
Of his worldview and intentions.
Please roll the clip.
The worst people are the enemies from within.
The enemy from within. Those people are more dangerous, the enemy from within, than Russia and China.
These people should be put in jail the way they talk about our judges and our justices. Now, if you had one really violent day, one rough hour, and I mean real rough.
I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
You see that? You see her throwing the hands up after the montage of out-of-context clips from very different situations that all have different prompts leading up to them. But with her setup of the clip, he tells us who he is, he tells us what he's going to do, and he tells us what his intentions are. And you don't have to believe me because you're going to hear it from his mouth. His own words tell you. And then she goes on here to further specify how her supporters are to interpret that montage of out-of-context clips.
So you heard his words. You heard his words coming from him. He's talking about the enemy within Pennsylvania. He's talking about the enemy within our country, Pennsylvania. He's talking about that he considers anyone who doesn't support him or who will not bend to his will an enemy of our country.
Another crucial element. When Trump says the enemy from within, according to the definition that the narrative is spreading, who he is talking about are everyday, ordinary American citizens who disagree with him and who don't bend to his will. Could be you, could be me, could be anybody. Could be every single person walking down the street who might dare to question Donald Trump.
It's a serious issue. He is saying,
telling us very directly what she says he is saying.
That he would use the military to go after them. Think about this. And we know who he would target. And we know who he would target because he has attacked them before. Journalists whose stories he doesn't like. Election officials who refuse to cheat by filling extra votes and finding extra votes for him. Judges who insist on following the law instead of bending to his will. This is among the reasons I believe so strongly that a second Trump term would be a huge risk for America and dangerous. Donald Trump is increasingly unstable and unhinged.
A couple more talking points that are repeated ad nauseum by everybody.
And he is out for unchecked power. That's what he's
There's
looking for.
another one right there.
He wants to send the military after American citizens.
Reinforce that part right there, okay? Wants to send the military after American citizens. after Pennsylvanians who disagree with him, after Coloradans, after Ohioans, people from Georgia who simply don't bend the knee. If elected, Trump is very openly telling us that his intentions, what he will do, Kamala says, is he will use the military to go after all of us who disagree with him from time to time and refuse to bend the knee. That's the narrative. It's crazy, but it fits perfectly with the overarching narrative that Trump is an authoritarian who, as she said, is on the quest for unchecked power. He'll do anything to get it, including rounding up people who disagree, using the military, and that he is a Hitlerian figure. Many of the headlines today, especially MSNBC, I think one of them was like, Hitler much? It's the stupidest thing ever. They always do the stupid ones, but Hitler much? And then you have somebody come on and say, Trump is doing these rallies and using this language because he's attempting to try and recreate the events that Hitler did. Somebody actually said that. And they made up, they said that Trump was doing an event, I think at a location, maybe Madison Square Garden, something that he wasn't even doing to prove their point. That all of this simply represents that if Trump is elected again, Hitler's here, baby. Don't disagree, you're getting rounded up. This type of stuff right here is why the 70-year-old nice white lady with the drums that I messed with but talked to in that video when I was doing the Man on the Street video pretending to be a white dude for Harris, that's why that woman legitimately believes, you hear her say it in the video, that if Trump is elected, that he is going to round people like her, a 70-year-old nice white lady, up. And she believes it so strongly that she has a folder of countries that she is ready to move to as a 70-year-old woman to flee the country to get away from the persecution that Trump has planned for her. This type of propaganda is why people like that believe such crazy things in a way that it actually affects the way they live their lives and what they plan to do, because this fictional future is imprinted into their brains that somehow prevents any of their logical faculties that do exist from seeing all the flaws in the arguments being made to them. And this right here, which this story Kamala told, it's been picked up by everybody in the media. They're all parroting. It's an impressive coordination. But as I said at the top of the show, it didn't really take off until Fox News made sure that it would. Fox News it's almost like Fox News was slinging their big dick around saying, look, we can pretend like we're trying to cover this narrative, cover this truth up. Like we're opposing all of you guys. And while pretending to do that, what we're actually going to do is we're going to get more exposure to it than any of you MFers have been able to combined. And we'll ensure that everybody who supports Kamala believes it's true even stronger than they previously did. And I'm going to show you how they did that. It's kind of crazy. It's not crazy that they do that in a controlled opposition fashion, because they obviously are going to benefit from the ratings and everything. It's just the way they're doing it. It makes the way they blend out of context clips and with the the priming of the setup and the deceptive editing and then the follow-up interviews and revelations, and then specifically the making these source videos, as I said, nearly impossible for anyone who doesn't do this for a living to find. The source videos in that clip Kamala played, and the ones from the clips I'm going to play you that they're also playing aren't going to be found by anybody who is not committed to spending more time than most people have to spend to find them, because even though Fox News owns these clips, that could undermine this entire narrative. They put none of them on their website in a way that's publicly available anyway. And they put none of the context that's necessary in any of the clips on their YouTube channel. In fact, I went through a bunch of them. It looks like they specifically removed anything that gave any hint of what the actual context behind Trump's comments that Kamala is talking about here that tell the truth about it. I had to find this stuff on random small Rumble channels of somebody who ripped it off and put it up there, thankfully. Where is it? Could have had a Terminator mommy in Colorado. Yeah, absolutely. What'd you win? 40% against some guy, almost 40% who'd been an incumbent for 11 years? Forrest mommy. Imagine being that guy. You're a politician for like 12 years, and Forrest mommy runs against you. It gets like 40%. That guy's got, imagine having the infrastructure that guy did. And that guy better watch out, because Terminator mommy might be coming back for him. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, can't fix stupid, says Ruby. All right, let me find the next clip here. I structured this out specifically because there's just so many different avenues to the way they're propagating this lie. Okay. All right, so here's where we're going to start. So what they needed to really solidify what Kamala says here about this narrative, this Hitlerian narrative about Trump, is they needed comments Trump said during an interview he did, I think last Sunday with Maria Bartiromo, whatever the hell her name is. Maria B, I'm going to call her, on Fox News. And here, I'm going to show you what Trump said, which you've already heard this. You've heard his answer to something he was asked. You haven't heard the question he was asked that he was responding to. Here's what Trump says that gave them exactly what they needed to combine these words here with comments Trump has been saying at his rallies, to conflate them together to create the ultimate montage of clips that proves Trump is telling you he's going to round everybody up if elected and use the military to do so. You better not disagree with old Donnie. Here is his answer to an unknown question. And I bet most of you have not heard at all what the question leading up to this was. I mean, it was hard to find. It took me a good bit of time and searching to actually find this freaking this is the most relevant piece of information for understanding what he's actually saying here. Is completely left out of every single media clip that includes his answer. I mean that's telling. All right, here it is. This is the answer.
I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
Okay, that's the one right there. There's some radical leftist lunatics that should be handled by the National Guard, or if necessary, even the military. From there, what we get is Trump's promising to use the military to round up leftists. He said it right there. If he's elected, he's going to use the military to go get them, right? That's what everyone in the news, including Fox News, would have the public believe. Now let's hear, probably for the first time for many of you, the actual question. Just in the chats, how many of you guys have actually heard the question that Maria B asked him that he responded to? I'm curious. I have literally not seen the question asked played in any of the panel discussions on any of the major networks that all played this clip. I'm sure you've heard that clip. Well, there's a reason why they don't play the question. Because when you only tell part of the story, you can tell the part of the story that serves the narrative you're trying to propagate. While if you tell the whole story, your little propagation narrative is undermined. Hey, you got to keep that shit quiet about me cooking with a gas stove, Stoner. I have a gas stove. Do I cook out of it? You know, if the frozen package I bought at the grocery store doesn't have microwave instructions on it, then I'm like, I didn't realize I was investing in using the oven today with this, but you know, there's no microwave instructions. So yes, gas stove, just obey. Here is, make sure I got the right one here. Is this the question? Hold on a second.
Because they can't let that happen.
Yeah, and that is actually, that little line there is very important. They don't ever play that part of it either, actually. They can't let that happen. That's also a very, very, I mean, that's just so obvious when they leave the question out and when they leave that last line, and you'll see why in a second, that they're just snipping away the truth. That's what they're doing. Let's try. All right, here's the question. I hope this is the right one.
America,
there was an Afghan refugee charged with plotting U.S. Election Day massacre.
Nothing surprises me.
What about that, though? Are you expecting chaos on Election Day?
No, I don't think so.
Are you expecting chaos on Election Day?
Not from the side that votes for Trump.
But I'm just wondering if these outside agitators will start up on Election Day. Let's say you win. I mean, let's remember, you've got 50,000 Chinese nationals in this country in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
You have people on the terrorist watch list, 350 in the last couple of years. You got, like you said, 13,000 murderers and 15,000 rapists.
Right.
What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful Election Day.
What are you expecting on Election Day when you have all of these outside threats that she listed? Illegal immigrants committing crimes, these Chinese nationals. She threw a bunch of potential agitators out there in a question specifically about what do you think will happen on Election Day. And now, let's hear his answer.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within. Not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country.
So that's important. And like Trump talks in, I don't even know how to describe it. I think I talk this way sometimes too, but you start down one path, you mention something, you make a little aside about it, then you go back into the main point you're talking about. The question being about outside threats. Do you think they're going to have any threat to cause chaos on Election Day? And Trump answered that correctly. And he answered it, well, the reason he answered it correctly is because the illegal immigrants raping or whatever, and the Chinese nationals and all those outside threats that she mentioned in the premise, those groups of people cause chaos at any point in time. They aren't specifically emotionally connected to the outcome on Election Day. So there would be no reason for them to plan some sort of chaos to happen on that day. So while, yes, as he says here in the aside, yes, they're causing all kind of problems, but the bigger threat on Election Day are the people who have those emotional ties on either side of the aisle, who have been radicalized one way or another, or who are undercover federal agents pretending to be in one of those groups. Because the reaction emotionally to this big, important moment the media has made sure everybody is just so, tied to and invested in. Of course, every single person in the country, I should let him finish his answer.
The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
Okay. Anybody who's asked whether you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, conspiracy theorist, everybody is going to agree if there is a threat of chaos on Election Day, it's most likely going to come from, Republicans would say, radicalized Democrats. Democrats would say radicalized conservatives or MAGA. Libertarians or conspiracy theorists, well, we'd say undercover feds or CIA agents or something, pretending, as I said, to be one of those groups. Everybody for once would agree on what he said. The biggest threat on Election Day for causing chaos is an internal threat because the media has propagated narratives that lead to that being the most likely thing that would happen if something does happen. The media is very responsible for all of this. We all know that. But what he said there at the end, and the most important part of this, is that Trump will have no power over the military on Election Day because he is not commander-in-chief, win or lose, on that day. Joe Biden is. Trump, when he says, let's hear it again, and listen at the very end. They can't let that happen. He's talking about Joe Biden using the National Guard and, if necessary, the military to be on the ready to prevent potential chaos that could break out because the media has stirred it up, to stop it before it happens. Just like, according to the congressional records, whether true or not, it's what it says, Trump apparently tried to get the National Guard to the Capitol, he requested it, to help contain things and prevent any chaos from breaking out. The exact same thing he allegedly tried to do on January 6th. He is saying that to prevent chaos from happening on Election Day, the Biden administration should, use the National Guard, if necessary, the military, just to keep people from, crossing the boundary. Now, if you don't like that, you don't like that. But that's very different than what the media is saying that he's saying.
You said 13,000 murderers and 15,000 rapists.
Right.
What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful Election Day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of Election Day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
Because they can't let that happen. Who can't let that happen? The people who have the authority, the commander-in-chief, Joe Biden. Use the military, the National Guard, to prevent something or do whatever that the media and everybody else is saying. Trump is saying that if he's elected, he's going to use the military to round people up who disagree with him. He's actually talking about Joe Biden using the military, leaving it open for a possibility on election day. Not even talking about himself. But because they don't play that clip in full and they don't play the question with it, they can just spin this into some reality that's not even close to the actual thing that happened. And Fox News, all they had to do, could still do, at any point in time, especially during Bret Baier's, trustworthy Bret Baier, he's got a trustworthy face. That MFer was totally manipulating people the past couple days. All they had to do was play this entire clip. That's it. Play this entire clip and point out that Trump talking about the military is a response to a question about what's going to happen on Election Day, and he's not referring to himself using it. He's referring to Biden using it potentially if chaos were to break out. Like has happened. Summer of Love, some call it. Others would say January 6th. The ones who believe an insurrection happened. But the point is, you can't play this entire clip and continue to propagate the narrative that they're propagating, that Trump said, if elected, or is implying if elected, the military's coming after dissidents. You can't do that if you just play this 70-second clip. That's why none of them played it, and that's why all of them, that's why Fox News does not put this clip on their YouTube page. Go look for it. It's not there. And later, and this is the trick they did. This is the really sly trick that they're doing. Trump, later in this interview, says the words, the enemy from within, again, but he says it in response to a completely different question. And he says it in the same way that he has been saying it at his rallies, which is very different from the conversation about Election Day they just had. Here is the second time he says the enemy from within.
How are you going to guard against the bureaucrats undermining you?
Well, there's the question nobody's heard. How are you going to guard against the bureaucrats undermining you? That's this question compared to the previous question. What do you think is going to happen? Is there going to be chaos on Election Day? Two very different questions. How do you guard against bureaucrats that would undermine you in Washington?
Well, I always say, so we have two enemies. We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries, because if you have a smart president, he can handle them pretty easily. I got along great with all. I handled them.
He says this at every rally. He has them under control. We have the greatest military in the world, is what he uses, or the best military or strongest. And when you have a commander-in-chief and he refers to himself, talking about his previous administration, whether you agree with that or not, it's beside the point. We have the strongest military in the world, and when you have a commander-in-chief like me who knows how to use it, China and Russia and those guys aren't our biggest threat, because you can handle them with this power we have and the deterrence options available to us if you know how to do it the right way. But the bigger threat to the country are those internal. If he was talking about using the military against so-called the enemy from within, then he would also be saying that the enemy from within is not a big threat, because he could just as easily use the military against them. He's not saying that. And he continues, and I think it's perfectly clear what he's saying. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just reading into it.
But the thing that's tougher to handle are these lunatics that we have inside, like Adam Schiff, Shifty Schiff. Think of this guy's going to be a senator. He's running against a guy that doesn't understand politics at all, Garvey. But he was a good baseball player. But he doesn't understand politics at all.
Yeah,
Adam Shifty Schiff, who's a total sleazebag, is going to become a senator.
Yep.
But I call him the enemy from within. When you look at the danger he put our country in, potentially with Russia, with a phony made-up deal that he made up with Hillary and some bad people, that started off as an excuse for why she lost an election that a lot of people thought she should have won, because the polls indicated she might win, and then she got beaten everywhere, virtually. When you look at that, and then they said, it was Russia. They used it as an excuse. And then the fake news picked it up. And while you're on this, let's talk about the single greatest scandal, in my opinion, in broadcast history. 60 Minutes and CBS interviewed Kamala, and she's incompetent. She gave them the dumbest answer anyone's ever heard. So they took that answer out, threw it, or the whole answer they threw out, and they took another answer that she gave to a totally different question and inserted it. And supposedly they did this a number of times, and they got caught. 60 Minutes, and CBS should lose their license for that.
Okay. Whether you agree with they should lose their license for that or not, saying that CBS should lose their license for inserting an answer to a completely different question to make Kamala look good is very different than I'm going to send the military after my political opponents and Americans who disagree with me. It is ironic because in this very narrative here, the media is inserting different answers with no questions to create a false illusion. But what he says here is he clearly defines, and he's defined it multiple times at his rallies, who he's talking about when he says the enemy from within. And despite what all of the media has been saying, and Kamala's been saying, he's not talking about everyday American citizens that he's going to go after who disagree with him if he's elected with the military. He's talking about Adam Schiff. He's talking about politicians, radical leftists, who spread propaganda and bewilder people into potentially committing acts of violence because of the lies they have told them and the fear they've created in them. He's talking about the bureaucratic state of unelected intel agents. You can hear him talking about this in more detail in his rallies. And the way to stop them, the way to stop this enemy from within, corrupt politicians, corrupt bureaucratic intel agents, corrupt media, is to put somebody up against Adam Schiff, for example, in California, who is not incompetent, that can win an election against them. Not to use the military against them. He very clearly is telling what the solution is. You get candidates who are good and strong candidates who can beat these people who never have anybody running against them who gives them even a challenge. That's how Adam Schiff has power and has been able to abuse it corruptly for so long, because he is in an area where he's never really been challenged. So he's basically a lifetime politician without any threat of being taken down. The way to stop it is better politicians who can beat these sleazy, corrupt officials. The way to stop it, his next solution, is to take the license away from CBS, who edited Kamala, who put a different answer to what he said. Take their license away. Maybe you don't agree with that. But it's still not him saying, send the military on CBS and anybody who watches them. At no point in time did Trump ever mention using the military for anything here in this clip. No point in time did he ever imply it. No point in time, if you're just watching this by yourself, do you even think that by listening to what he says. However, what the news has done is they've taken Trump's answer to this clip, to this question in this clip, and Trump's answer to the question in the earlier clip from this interview that I just played, and they have conflated them together as one, and they've stripped away the context of the revealing context that shows he's talking about on Election Day, about what Biden can do. Not beyond Election Day, if he's elected, what he will do, which is what they say. And they have spun this Hitlerian narrative out of it. And the really, really crazy thing, yeah, he does have a lot of spray tan here, is they actually, at first I'm watching these and I'm thinking that definitely Kamala was working with Bret Baier, that they almost like they maybe even like did a read through and practiced. And maybe even Trump, which I often do lean that way about some of this stuff. But I think that Fox News actually bamboozled both Trump and Kamala during Kamala's interview with Bret Baier and during Trump's town hall by playing for them separately out of context clips and then asking each other to respond to the out-of-context responses that they had to the clips, which created this firestorm of controversy and has dominated the news cycle. People responding to out-of-context things that other people said, thinking they know the context those people are responding to. It's convoluted and twisted, and this is why it's effective. I'm going to show you. Keep that one up in case we need that one. All right, let's try this one here. All right, before I show you that stuff, how Fox News, I mean, it's very, very sly of Fox News. The conflation of those two responses that Trump had to very separate questions was then taken by all of the media. And here's a couple of examples of how the media just ran with, I mean, some of them know what they're doing. Other ones, thank you, Forrest Mom. Thank you, guys. You hit that like button. Some of them are just following along because they're brainwashed. But here's one example of what this narrative became in the news. I don't know who this douchebag is, but here's what he says.
I missed something during last week's...
Hold on, I gotta turn that down. Got that double speed up.
I missed something during last week's Donald Trump rally in Aurora. Was standing there, heard it, just wasn't sure if I heard what I thought I heard, so we did not play it back to you here. It seemed that Trump was talking in Aurora about...
So that's an interesting thing he said there. He heard something that Trump said. He wasn't sure that he heard what he thought he heard, right? Until later, when he heard something else in another context, and then Kamala told him what he is supposed to hear. That's why I picked this clip.
Just wasn't sure if I heard what I thought I heard, so we did not play it back to you here. It seemed that Trump was talking in Aurora about using the U.S. military against Americans that he says hate this country. Listen to what he said.
We have the greatest military in the world, but you have to know how to use them. You have to know how to use them. But I protect you against outside enemies.
You have the greatest military in the world. You have to know how to use them. I protect you against outside enemies. He's talking about China and Russia, knowing how to use the military to protect against the outside enemy. I know you guys know this, but I'm really hammering this home. It's because it's just, I mean, even for me, I had to watch some of this stuff multiple times to be like, man, they're really, really taking it up a notch in the way they confuse things.
Protect you against outside enemies. But, you know, I always say we have the outside enemy. So you can say China, you can say Russia, you can say Kim Jong-un, you can say, but that's not, it's going to be fun. If you have a smart president, no problem.
No problem. No problem, because you got the military.
It's the enemy from within. All the scum that we have to deal with that hate our country, that's a bigger enemy than China.
It's a bigger enemy than China because, you know, you can't use your military against them, obviously.
And Russia.
All right, the military thing and the enemy within, like the comments are kind of next to each other, but it's not super clear.
I think it is super clear. I think it's super clear that he's talking about separate things.
Well, over the weekend on Fox, Trump just came out and said what he seemed to be saying in Aurora, that he has a desire to use the U.S. military against American citizens.
God, I can't stand. He came right out and said it, and this prick tells you what he says, which he doesn't actually say, before playing the clip out of context. Man, this guy needs to be. Somebody needs to give this guy what's it called when you shove his head in the toilet and flush it. This douchebag needs one of those.
In Aurora, that he has the desire to use the U.S. military against American citizens.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
The Harris campaign responded to that, saying that it should, quote, alarm every American who cares about their freedom and security.
That is just a blatant lie. Obviously, he didn't include the question Trump asked that I just played. And he primes his audience by saying, Trump came right out and said it. he has a desire to use the military against the American people. And then he plays a clip to show evidence of that, in which, in full context, Trump is saying that Joe Biden has the power to use the military to, if needed, prevent chaos on election day specifically. You guys think this guy knows he's lying? You think he's just so eager to be accepted in the media elites, among the media elites, because he looks like he's not there. He looks like he would shine Jake Tapper's knob, you know, to get invited to a party that Brian Stelter might be at. Or do you think does he believe it, or is he just knowingly lying? I don't know this guy. I don't know who this guy is. Here is another example of how the media ran with this lie.
Hour this morning.
Fox News invited Donald Trump to a town hall with an audience of women. A friendly Q&A session where he laughed off his increasingly violent rhetoric.
Kamala Harris has said you sounded unhinged and unchecked power is in our future. What do you say about that?
I thought it was a nice presentation.
So there, they say he laughs off his violent rhetoric. They didn't play any. How do they know what he's laughing off?
I wasn't unhinged.
Trump is.
The implication is that he laughed off what they assert is accepted truth now, that Trump is going around saying that he wants to use the military to round people up if elected. That's not at all what he's saying that to. Like, I'll show you that in context in a minute. Not even close to what he's laughing off right there.
Is standing by his words, describing his perceived.
Oh, yeah, the double down narrative, double down on his military. Yeah, no, he never doubled down.
Opponents as the enemy within, the same phrase he used Sunday when he also threatened force against them.
We have some sick people, radical left lunatics.
No, he did.
And I think and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard.
It's so funny. He doesn't have control over the military on Election Day. Biden does. You can even see it says Election Day security on the lower third. People they just don't. Why would you put that together or even attempt to find the truth or the context when the media that you're consuming and that a lot of people are consuming here is just telling you what you want to be true? There's no reason to go search for information that takes away that good feeling of confirmation bias.
Or if really necessary, by the military.
By any standard, this is a remarkable threat, but it's in line with
It's
Trump.
not a remarkable threat. It's not. He wasn't threatening anything. He was not. Joe Biden should use the military. Joe Biden should use the National Guard. Yeah, maybe the military. If they fear that there might be chaos. Trump even said he doesn't think there'll be chaos. I don't think so. But if there is, it would come from them after I won. And Joe Biden should use the resources available just to make sure things don't pop off. It's maddening.
Embrace of authoritarian attitudes.
There it is.
This week alone, he tried to rewrite the history of January 6th, refusing to acknowledge violence nearly stopped the transfer of power.
You had a peaceful, very peaceful. I left.
The so-called violence, it expedited the transfer of power because many of the congressmen, maybe some of the congresswomen who were going to challenge the certification of the election stood down after people came in the Capitol, because people came in the Capitol. So the so-called violence ensured the election would be certified. Didn't come close to stopping it.
I left the morning that I was supposed to leave.
What?
And his rallies can
What's that again?
To leave. I left.
transfer of power.
You had a peaceful, very peaceful. I left the morning that I was supposed to leave.
That's true. I love when they say, so-and-so is about to say this damning thing. And then they play the clip, and it's not even related at all to what they claimed they were going to say. He's right. Did he not leave on the first day? that Biden was supposed to be. Was he gone? Yeah, he was gone.
And his rallies continue to feature dehumanizing language.
When I win on November 5th, the migrant invasion ends and the restoration of our country begins.
So what is that? The migrant invasion ends and the restoration of our country begins. That's dehumanizing. I guess invasion is what they would say. Yet you're Hitler. Russia. I mean, none of that has any dehumanizing.
While his running mate, J.D. Vance, is now embracing the lie the 2020 election was stolen from Trump.
I think there are serious problems in 2020. So did Donald Trump lose the election? Not by the words that I would use.
All of it so alarming to Trump's critics. More than 100 Republicans, including former elected officials and staffers, campaigned with Kamala Harris.
I hate that. Like more than, so-and-so is a Republican, so therefore the Republican who is now siding with Democrats or vice versa, so therefore you should put more credibility to what they say. There is the activist right now. I could tell they had a training session where they're training their activists on the street to say that they used to be Trump supporters, that they were MAGA in 2020. I know because at the Trump rally, when I walked up to a group of Harris Walls supporters who were protesting Trump's rally, I didn't even prompt this lady, but this lady started just like right off the bat, was like, I was MAGA. I was MAGA in 2020. I voted for Trump, and I was like, oh, what changed? And the first thing she said was, I'm standing for LGBTQ trans rights and just a bunch of things that nobody who voted for Trump in 2020 would ever say is why they're not voting for him now. There are Republicans who are voting for Kamala, supporting Kamala, who don't say anything about how they love LGBT. They say that I'm voting for her because I saw his threat on democracy on January 6th. They need to train them to say the correct thing. She obviously was not a MAGA person. And I knew this was a training. This was a new activism technique because the next day, a friend of mine sent me a text banking message that was like, hey, I'm so-and-so. I used to be MAGA. I voted for Trump. And here's why you should listen to me. And then I started getting emails, and then I saw an ad on, I think it was on that show. I watched a, what's it called? Agatha All Along episode. I just want to see how many homosexual people were in the leads. And actually, there's 5 witches. 4 of them are lesbians in this show. The 5th one is a gay teenage witch boy. 5 for 5 on the homosexuals there. I think possibly the witch population is going to be dwindling unless they can just, blink babies into reality. Nevertheless, I saw an ad that was for Harris Walls, and it was somebody saying, I voted for MAGA in 2020. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so coordinated. And you just can't tell someone with purple hair who looks like one of those blimps that fly over the football game, and who says she switched to Harris because I guess this woman's reasoning was, I was MAGA in 2020, and I thought he was going to be a champion for transing children and LGBTQs, and then when I realized he wasn't, I was out. You got to be more believable in the story. I'm going to back it up a little bit.
Including former elected officials and staffers, campaigned with Kamala Harris.
We are here today because we share a core belief that we must put country before party.
Harris trying to connect directly with Trump's base, painting him as dangerous during an interview with Fox News.
Now, this is where the crazy out of context stuff goes.
He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
Harris's interview
Never said he'd lock people up for criticizing.
On Fox was combative, and she didn't answer some direct questions on immigration, but she avoided.
This woman just looks like she just woke up after having all-night sex with Michael Moore or something.
Criticizing Trump supporters.
I mean, look at that. Look at her bedhead there. Somebody went whaling last night with this chick. Jesus. Comb your hair, lady. I mean, that was something to see. All right. Here's another example of the narrative just being, they run with it, man. You know, you got to give them credit. They're organizers. They know how to organize a campaign of bullshit for sure. See that headline? This is what I was talking about. Dictator much? What is that? I mean, this is somebody who they pretend is professional journalists. Dictator much?
And we begin tonight with less than 3 weeks. Left on the campaign trail.
She just needs to go Joy Reid, full circus clown. She's one step away from it anyway. I mean, the makeup is almost there. Her buck teeth help.
And 2 campaigns that could not be any more different. We have Vice President Kamala Harris sending a unity message of country before party versus Donald
I guess people believe that.
Trump, who puts himself before country.
You
and
would?
It is because her opponent is Donald Trump, unfit, unhinged, and anti-democratic.
There are the
Kamala
points.
Harris is making inroads into a broad coalition that we have not seen, really.
Like, we've literally not seen it because you go to all of her rallies, if you can find where they are, and there's nobody there. It's all invisible.
In the 21st century, a coalition of Democrats, independents, and Republicans united for democracy and united against Trump. Moments ago, Harris even ventured into the hostile television territory for the first interview that she's had thus far on Fox.
And that it was so apparent how they were going to report
Though the first
this too.
portion of the interview was entirely about immigration, the vice president managed to wrestle away from migrant crisis fear-mongering to address the stakes of this election.
Are they misguided, the 50%?
All right, I'm going to play that clip in a second for somebody else. I just want to see what Joy Reid had to say. I feel like Joy Reid doesn't shave downstairs, but she does dye, and I feel like it's the colors of the gay pride flag with the newly added trans people of color stripes that the crosswalks in Atlanta added. I feel like she models the hair downstairs after the Atlanta crosswalks. Okay. Now, Fox News, man, very impressive. This propaganda apparatus here. Let's see. This is what happened when Fox News had the opportunity to play the clip I played you guys of Maria B's question to Trump that clarifies that he's talking about what Joe Biden could do on Election Day to stop chaos, separate from the other clip of him talking about the establishment actors, the corrupt actors, being the enemy from within who should be stopped using the election process and better candidates or taking away licenses. He could have done all of that and made Kamala look stupid. But instead, when the subject of Trump saying the enemy from within came up, here is what Bret Baier, the trustworthy Bret Baier, did instead.
Listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president, one, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say?
The way you ask that question is, why is he beating you? Like you just touch the chauffeur's shoulder in your Doug Emhoff date. That would have been the proper way to ask that question.
Leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk.
So are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people.
So he wants her to bring out the enemy from within. They either coordinated it or he is just pressing, knowing she'll say it if he presses her the right way, so he can then do what he does after she says it.
And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
Okay. I'm going to play that little response that Bret Baier gave again.
Talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
So when I heard that immediately, I said, they're not going to play the question. This is like an obvious out of context signal here. Here's how he responded. We asked him that question. What question? They know their audience is going to assume vaguely what question he might be referring to, but what actual question did they ask that the clip they're going to show is a clip of Trump responding to? I bet we could sit down until I play the actual lead up to it here in a minute and try and figure out what specific question he's talking about that he says was asked, and we'd have like 10 different answers. Yet he gets into an argument and keeps insisting that he asked a specific question that he just assumes everybody knows what it is. Here's the clip he plays of Trump's response.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. But think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So before she responds, we know that Trump was asked two very different questions in that first interview that launched this whole thing. One about Election Day, one about the bureaucrats who try to undermine him. We don't know what he's actually talking about there, if it's one of those or something else. Yet Kamala, who only saw that, is now going to respond to what is completely unclear Trump is responding to.
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked.
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness,
she's right. He didn't show that, and they didn't show that on purpose. I think they were trying to provoke Kamala. Now, it ended up helping Kamala propagate a narrative she's trying to propagate, and it made her look tough. I knew immediately when this happened that the narrative is going to be Bret Baier kind of acted like Trump by interrupting and challenging her, and she was tough, and she called him out on an attempt by Fox News to cover up the fact that Trump is threatening to round up Americans using the military if he's elected by playing a clip of Trump out of context. That clip was so obviously and blatantly out of context that it was begging to be called out. It was begging to be called out. When he says, we asked that question, here's the response, why not just play the question? And the way they started it in what seemed like the middle of something, it's just like, this is just, it's saying, please, please challenge me. And Kamala does. And Bret Baier keeps injecting, saying, no, but we asked that specific question. What Kamala should have done is she smart? And I actually think that they did bait her here. I think they played her a little bit. I think they do coordinate sometimes, but I think here they know Kamala. They know what they can get her to react to, and she reacted the way they expected. But what she should have said is, what question, Brett? What specific question are you saying that you asked that was a response to? That's what someone seeking for thoroughness and a proper response to a proper comment someone else said would do. But Kamala is just ready to regurgitate the talking point that, Trump's Hitler. Sorry I'm belaboring this. I just find this stuff fascinating.
They're threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So it's just so funny. They intentionally played a clip of Trump where he doesn't even say the things. They omitted the very thing that they know is the controversial hot button phrase, the enemy from within. They just said that that's what he was talking about. I mean, it's so funny.
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed, in all fairness and respect to you.
And so you stop it there. Trump... He hasn't been speaking, so what Kamala said, there's another layer removed. Trump has not been speaking about the enemy from within when he's speaking about the American people. I don't consider Adam Schiff and the bureaucrats the American people the way that she's talking about it. So what she's saying also doesn't exist. Now, does she believe it does? Has she only watched the montages and she believes that he is saying those things because she's drunk all the time? I don't know.
Question that we asked him.
There he is insisting we ask that question. What question?
That, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he's talking.
He hasn't repeated what she's saying he repeated many times or at all. Clips of him saying what they are able to convince people to interpret as him saying that have been repeated.
About turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about...
That's funny. So I'm sorry.
That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed, in all fairness and respect to you.
That was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about...
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. And I love that it says language barrier in the lower third. It is a language barrier. It's a manipulation barrier that causes a language barrier.
Going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy.
Just like he locked Hillary up, remember?
And in a democracy, the president...
Oh, my God. I didn't see that before. Watch Bret Baier. I did not see that. Maybe I saw that wrong. It looks like Bret Baier, when she's saying that, kind of smirks on the left side of his face because he got her where he wanted her. Watch this.
Because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the president of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former...
Bret Baier knows full well that Trump never said that. And he knows full well because Fox News has all the clips. He could play them.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump... You call Donald Trump... he's misguided. You say now he's unstable.
He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
So they then move on. But Bret Baier, 3 times during that little exchange, said, no, we asked that specific question. He said specific. We asked. That's what we asked. What did he ask? What did Fox News ask? Right? And it's funny because it's very obvious, as I said a moment ago, the media is going to say Kamala called them out on trying to help Trump using out of context stuff. So the next day, Bret Baier goes on Fox News and he makes an admission. Oh, trustworthy Bret Baier, who I think was smirking a little bit when he baited Kamala into what he baited her into getting passionate about. He said, I made a mistake. What I intended to do was play a different clip that actually showed the full context. And that was my fault. And then Fox News used this tactic that all of the media, I think they used it. If they didn't use it, CNN did. I'll show you CNN using it. Where they show the two clips side by side. They show, here's what we played, or what the person spreading the disinformation played, or misinformation. They played this out of context clip. It's a vertical video. And then after they play that, they play the other side, which is said to be the full context. This is what but it's not, though. It's also out of context. Yet to the viewers, it looks like they're showing the full context, yet even that context they did show reinforces the same lie while making them look a little bit more trustworthy because they're fact-checking and showing you for yourself. And here's Bret Baier lying about making a mistake. He didn't make a mistake. And I'll show you he didn't make a mistake. Hold on. I hope anything I'm saying makes sense. It's melted my brain. The twisted layers of manipulation they're putting into this one. Here's Baier on Fox the next day.
I did make a mistake, and I want to say that I did make a mistake. When I called for a soundbite, I was expecting a piece of the enemy from within.
That's what when he called for the soundbite, he's expecting that, right?
Maria Bartiromo's interview to be tied to the piece from your town hall, Harris, where you asked the former president about the enemy from within. It just had the piece about the town hall. Just take a listen to what I meant to roll.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
I mean, nothing is more.
My point was that we asked him the question about that sentence.
We asked him a question about that sentence. Still don't know what he says they asked. I'll show you what they actually asked, which isn't what he says they did. But a couple of things here. Fox News, again, who has all of the relevant clips available that they haven't put on the YouTube page, even they, when they're correcting their own alleged mistake, do so in a way that excludes the most important information needed to understand all, which was the question Maria B. asked. They packaged the two separate responses to two separate questions together. They conflated them just like everybody else to make it seem like when he was talking about the military that he was talking about what he'd do after he's elected. They did the same stuff. So their correction reinforces the narrative while making an attempt to look honest. I'm not afraid to admit that I made a mistake. Play the whole clip. And this guy can be a good liar because he has a trustworthy face and he never shows a high range of emotion. And here's how we know he was lying about making a mistake. He said he was expecting them to play a clip of two separate interviews from Maria B. and from Faulkner, sliced together. And not just that one. Yet, let's go back to him introducing the clip to Kamala. Let's see what he said again.
Within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
We asked that question to the former president today, and Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded. Baier asked for a clip of Trump responding to Faulkner during a Faulkner Fox News town hall. He got exactly what he asked for. And then he goes on Fox the next day and says, no, that was an accident. No, it wasn't. It was not an accident. It was very intentional to propagate this narrative while trying to appear to be on the opposite side of it. It's crazy, you know? They made it so blatantly obvious that they played this Trump clip to Kamala out of context that the only thing one who doesn't like them, or maybe even thinks they're okay, would believe is that, well, the only reason they would do that, they would not play the full context of something Trump said in an interview, is because they're trying to help him cover up something that makes him look bad. When the reality is, playing the full context of what he said and what he was asked in their own Fox interview would actually clear all of this up and destroy the lie that their BS is propagating. Bret Baier, man, that's a sleazy, sleazy liar there. Now, here's CNN doing the side-by-side technique. This is a new technique you'll see. I don't know if it's new, but they're all testing it out today. The see for yourself debunking technique.
Hadass, good to see you both.
Here's Brian Stelter, the potato, on with Jim Acosta right after Stelter got done sucking his own dick.
I want to ask you, Brian, about this other moment between Kamala Harris and Bret Baier. It was over whether Trump, his comments about the enemy from within and so on. Let's play that and talk about it on the other side.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
Side-by-side videos.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest thing. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip
There's
was
brave
not
Kamala.
what he has been saying about the enemy
Very brave
within.
Kamala.
It is the enemy.
And then they just switched it for those listening to the video on the right side. So that was the lie. Now here's the truth, which is also the lie.
From within, and they're very dangerous. They're Marxists and communists and fascists, and they're sick. I use a guy like Adam Schiff.
All right, you get the point. They just expanded the clip while still leaving out the most important, relevant context. It's really very sly. Now, I said Kamala got played. I think Trump also got played by Fox News. And I'll show you why I think that in this clip where we actually get to see what led up to what Trump said in the clip that Bret Baier played for Kamala. Isn't it so like convoluted? It's like manipulation twice, third and fourth removed, all starting from the manipulation of the very first interview with Maria. Here is him at the town hall with Harris Faulkner. Is that up there on screen? Hold on. All right, listen to this shit.
We're talking about safety. We're talking about crime. Right now, Vice President Kamala Harris is playing some comments that you made to Maria Bartiromo on Sunday. I don't know if you've seen this.
No.
And they're using your words to say that you are not for crime and keeping particularly women.
I have to digest this stuff myself here. Have you seen that Kamala is using your own words? She's playing clips of your words to say that I think what she's saying that you're not actually against crime.
Safe and ads. I want to take a look at what you said.
You're not actually against crime.
And
You don't want to protect. It wasn't really a question. It was just a transition to play the clip. Yeah, we're talking about crime, and Kamala's actually using your own words and clips to actually say that you actually don't care about protecting women. And then they play the clip. So Trump, if we take Trump at his word, who said he has not seen Kamala doing this. Now, maybe he's lying, but taking that at face value, then what Trump is going to see for the first time are what they show him, which they just said is what Kamala is repeating in clips to smear him. And thus what he responds to in the clip that is then later played by Bret Baier to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, who is unaware, almost definitely, of the clip Trump has played that he responds to that she then responded. It's so convoluted.
Tell me, let's watch it.
If we have to.
Yeah.
We have two enemies. We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries, because if you have a smart president, he can handle them pretty easily. But
you see that transition? That's a transition slice there. Watch that for those looking.
I want to take a look at what you said and just tell me, let's watch it.
If we have to.
Yeah.
We have two enemies. We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries, because if you have a smart president, he can handle them pretty easily. But
that first clip, I think, was from his response to the election day thing. This one that they spliced together is a response to the later question about how to prevent people from undermining you if the bureaucrats from undermining you if you're elected.
The thing that's tougher to handle are these lunatics that we have inside, like Adam Schiff. I call him the enemy from within.
Mr. President.
So they didn't include the military thing, which is important for Kamala's narrative anyway. Trump speaks to people all day, every day, and he uses talking points like the enemy within thing to talk about Adam Schiff and what he says that all the time. And it's not easy to remember who you said what to whom when you're doing this all the time. They played a clip for him after he said that he has not seen what Kamala has said, or the clips that she has played. They played a clip that only included language that would trigger, in his mind, conversations that he has been having about the enemy within, Adam Schiff, the propaganda news who lies, the bureaucratic state, the corrupt politicians who have nobody opposing them in elections. So that would trigger that. That's a reasonable thing to believe that he would come out of seeing that clip thinking that he is talking about and responding to his beliefs about Adam Schiff and the bureaucratic state, which means, or is implied, that he thinks that Kamala Harris is playing clips to use his own words about that specific subject and not the military thing against him, which are very different.
And Kamala Harris has said you sounded unhinged. And
by the way, wait, I got to stop interrupting so much. All right, hold on.
Mr. President, Kamala Harris has said you sounded unhinged and unchecked power is in our future.
All right, I'm stopping that there because that's the question. Kamala Harris has said you're unhinged and unchecked power is in our future. Did you at any point in time hear her say what Bret Baier suggested that she said, or ask a question that he tried to imply that they asked to Kamala, or on the next day on Fox News when he said he made a mistake? He made it seem like she asked him specifically about, Mr. President, you said you're going to go after American citizens using the military, citizens who disagree with you, the enemy within, if you're elected. Isn't that an overreach, an abuse of your power? Like, he made it seem like that was the subject of a question that she asked. She doesn't even mention the military. It's not in the clip. It's not in her question. Doesn't even ask him a question at all. Yet for 2 straight days and 3 times in that argument with Kamala Harris, Bret Baier insists that they did in fact ask a question somehow related to Trump using the military against, quote, the enemy within, who is apparently the American people, according to this lie. This is just all such a convoluted lie. And the way I see them maybe bamboozling Trump a little is by getting him to react to what they lead him to believe are smears by Kamala using language of his that she's not actually using. So part of what he said in those clips, Kamala does use. But the most relevant and the most damning, the most effective language that Kamala and the media uses is the language about the military being used. Out of context, yes, but still the most effective and the scariest. Now, had they included that in the clip, it probably would have dawned on Trump that, oh, that was when we were talking about what might happen on Election Day and how Biden can use the National Guard or military to prevent it. He could have provided clarity. But they omitted it because if clarity would have been provided, it would not have given them this soundbite here to play to Kamala.
What do you say about that?
I thought it was a nice presentation. I wasn't unhinged. You know what they are? They're a party of sound bites. Somebody asked me, can they be brought together? You know, I never thought really, I wasn't thinking like they could, because they're very, very different. And it is the enemy from within, and they're very dangerous. They're Marxists and communists and fascists, and they're sick. I use a guy like Adam Schiff because they made up the Russia hoax. It took 2 years to solve the problem. Absolutely nothing was done wrong, et cetera, et cetera. They're dangerous for our country. We have China, we have Russia, we have all these countries. If you have a smart president, they can all be handled. The more difficult are, the Pelosi.
He very clearly differentiates.
These people, they're so sick and they're so evil. If they would spend their time trying to make America great again, it would be so easy to make this country great. But when I heard about that, they were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. But think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
All right.
They're the threat to democracy.
And so that's the start of what they played. Let's go back to what they played for Kamala, and then we'll wrap this up. I really hit this point home. Make sure I got the right clip here. Okay. So Trump thinks he is responding to Trump thinks they're talking about the the deep state people, I guess you could say, is an easy way to say it. And how they accuse people or whatever. Kamala, on the other hand, because of the way they presented things in this interview, is talking about military against the American people. Here it is one last time.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk.
So are they misguided, the 50%? Are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president.
We asked that question to the former president. Baier said that right after she said he talks about turning the military against the American people. Then he says, we asked that question, here's the clip, when they absolutely did not ask anything about turning the military against the American people, nor did they include any comments about the military that he was talking about in another context in the video. And I can't think of any other explanation other than that was done absolutely 100% intentionally to do just the very thing they've been able to do, because Fox News has all of the relevant clips to provide context and clarify all of this. And they have made them nearly impossible to find.
And today, Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been.
You get the point. Baier is saying, yeah, we asked him about turning the military against the American people. And here's how he responded. And then they play a clip of Trump responding to a different out of context clip about him calling Adam Schiff the enemy from within. That makes no mention of the military. Literally the opposite of what they showed her. Very sly Fox News. Very convoluted. I think they played both Trump and Kamala there. And they got fantastic ratings out of it. I saw something right before the show that they had biggest rating, like blew everybody else away. And then after these clips came out, every single other media organization picked up these clips, gobbled them up, and they went viral. Hooray for Fox News. And Bret Baier, the trusting face, sometimes the most effective liar. And finally, because it's time to get out of here, I saw this article about Jimmy Carter. You guys familiar with Jimmy Carter? Former president. Not a good president, but by all accounts, a good man for most of his life. And despite living a good life, being kind, he's 100 years old. He's an invalid. You've seen him in his public appearances, has no idea where he is, probably what his own name is, and yet his family has decided to force him as his final act, because he's in no position to consent or resist, force him to make the final stamp he makes on society be that he is perhaps America's oldest and proudest white dude for Harris. Because it was all over the news the past couple days that Jimmy Carter, who's lived in hospice for 19 months, the average stay in hospice for a patient is 53 days. He's been there almost 600 days. Hospice is where you go to die. He's been in the place where people are dying, waiting to die for 19 months. And the reason he keeps hanging on, we're told, is because he decided to put off reuniting with the love of his life, the woman he was married to for 77 years. He put off reuniting the recently passed. Put it off, embracing her again at the pearly gates in heaven. Because before he could do that, he just can't die before getting to experience the joy of casting a vote for Kamala Harris. His body's betrayed him. His mind has betrayed him. He's living in probably god-awful conditions. But people will endure a lot. He would be here another 50 years in a prison labor camp if that's what it took for him to finally get to experience the thing he's lived his entire life waiting for. The joy of Kamala. If you think the joy and the enthusiasm is fabricated, look that man in the eyes, Jimmy Carter, and you tell him that the joy is not real. And I promise you, you can try as hard as you may to convince him that it's not real, but you will fail. Because it is impossible to convince somebody of your lies whose brain hasn't worked in 2 years. He won't know what the hell you're talking about, who Kamala is, who you or he is. His son is going on all these interviews saying, my dad was so excited to cast his vote. He's politically engaged. He's excited. We got his ballot in the mail in Georgia where there's mail delays that are going to cause chaos. Can you imagine going and saying that, seriously, Because it makes perfect sense that a 100-year-old man who's been living in hospice for 19 years is politically engaged. You know? Because that's the last thing to go. You know, you lose your body betrays you. You eventually lose, especially if you get to be in your hundreds, your ability to walk, your wheelchair bound, your mind slowly betrays you. Your cognitive abilities, awareness betray you. But not your political engagement. You know where you are, who you are. You can't move. You can't eat. You can't open your eyes. But the last thing to go is that political engagement. And only then will you breathe your last breath. I feel bad for Jimmy Carter. I would like to know how long. So that he was like, yeah, no, my dad told me in August that he's for Kamala. He's, you know, I don't believe that, actually. I don't believe he even knows who Kamala is if you asked him. But what's the period of time there? You know, how long can somebody who has clearly lost their... I mean, have you seen Jimmy Carter at his birthday party? I should show you that before I leave. Look at this. Jimmy Carter, 100th birthday party. Jimmy Carter at his 100th birthday party looked like someone who was being brutally tortured. Well, everybody else around him is like laughing at him. Is what he looked like to me, anyway. Where's the look at this? I don't even like to show this. I really don't like to show this because I feel sorry for the man. But I hope his family is confident that he gave them the okay to exploit him when he has no idea what's going on. Because who would consent to their final act being, I am a 100-year-old white dude for Harris? Look at this picture. This is him at his 100th birthday party. You see this? At age 100, Jimmy Carter cast his ballot for the 2024 election by mail in Georgia. Did he cast his ballot? Did he do backflips all the way to the mailbox? Did he scribble or whatever in the ballot thing in the mail? Who did that for him? His son? And how do we know? Like, when did his son get the information from his dad on who to cast the ballot for? The day of? A week before? 3 months before? Was it 3 years ago? At what point in time do you say, you know, we need to get an updated expression of who this person wants to vote for? You can't just have unlimited time limits. Like, does this look like a person to you who is politically engaged? Like, his son went on MSNBC and talked about how enthusiastic and politically engaged he is. He's watching the news and he's about to die. He's 100. He's in hospice, and yet he's still obsessed with petty politics. And does he look super excited? This is like a month ago. Does this look like somebody who is just brimming with joy, waiting to vote for Kamala? I mean, what a joke. I just hope they are certain that he's okay with that, man. That's crazy. Did you guys, all right, one final thing, then I'm out. Yeah, I'm definitely. Did you guys see this? I thought this was, I didn't watch the whole interview, but Tucker brought on this guy, Mark Halperin, who's just, he just does morning MSNBC Joe, morning Brzezinski Joe, and he's just full of it. But Tucker asked him here about whether or not he believes if Trump wins, it's going to be just an awful thing for people. And Mark Halperin believes it's going to be just such a traumatic experience for half the country. Listen to what he says here.
Let's say Trump wins 3 weeks from today. Mm-hmm. What happens? The Democratic Party just, I mean, as you said, a lot of Democrats, maybe the majority, believe that Trump becoming president again is the worst thing that ever could happen. So how do they respond to that?
I say this not flippantly. I think it will be the cause of the greatest mental health crisis in the history of the country.
He says not flippantly.
I think tens of millions of people will question their connection to the nation, their connection to other human beings, their connection to their vision of what their future for them and their children could be like.
It's a non-flippant
And I
statement.
think that will be require an enormous amount of access to mental health professionals. I think it'll lead to trauma in the workplace. I think there'll be some degree of.
Are you being
protest? 100% serious. 100% serious.
Not flippant at all.
I think there'll be alcoholism. There'll be broken marriages. There'll be
What?
Yeah.
Now, what he's about to say, just to be clear, is not flippant, not in the least bit. He's serious. He's thought this through. This is how traumatic Trump winning will be to millions of Americans. What he's going to say here.
They think he's the worst person possible to be president, and having won by the hand of Jim Comey and fluke in 2016, and then performed in office for 4 years and denied who won the election last time, and January 6th, the fact that under a fair election, America chose by the rules,
very fair,
pre-agreed to,
most secure election,
Donald Trump again, I think it will
history,
cause the biggest mental health crisis in the history of America. Okay, and I don't think it will be kind of a passing thing that by the inauguration will be fine. I think it will be sustained and unprecedented and hideous. And I don't think the country's ready for it.
So mental health crises often manifest in violence.
Yeah, I think there'll be some violence. I think there'll be workplace fights. There'll be fights at birthday kids.
It's coming. I know I've been teasing you, but the true expression of just how traumatic this non-flippant, very serious thing he's saying, well thought out, is coming.
Birthday parties. I think there'll be protests that will turn violent. I hope they're not, but I think there will be some. But I think it will be more, it'll be less anger and more a failure to understand how it could happen. You know, like the death of a child, or your spouse announcing that your wife announcing she's a lesbian and she's leaving you for your best friend.
Holy smokes. That's what's coming. That's what's coming if Trump wins. Tens of millions of Americans are going to be so traumatized. It's going to be like if their spouse announced that they were a lesbian and then left them for their best friend. Presumably also a lesbian. What heterosexual male who we're talking about in this trauma situation on the planet has a best friend who's a lesbian? There's no heterosexual married male in America whose best friend is a lesbian. And a disloyal lesbian at that. I mean, come on. If you're a straight married man and you maintain a best friendship with a lesbian, you have stood by that lesbian side through thick and thin when everybody else judged that person, said slurs to them, through the coming out, all of it. You were there supporting her, the best friend, even when your wife said, why you got that dyke around? You said, that's my best friend, that dyke. And this disloyal dyke starts scissoring your newly lesbian wife. I mean, that's the trauma that people are going to feel if Trump wins. Like your lesbian best friend started scissoring your newly lesbian wife. That's bad for America. I mean, there's going to be trying times coming. You know, another possibility, and probably more accurate, well, actually, I would say this. If there was somebody who was in this situation here, is there any chance at all that they wouldn't be a Democrat? No, there's not. I think the more likely situation here is that this person is doubly traumatized because when their wife announces that they are a lesbian and then leaves them for their best friend, not only do they have that realization of wife becoming a lesbian, leaving them for their best friend, learning all of a sudden that their best friend, who their entire life they believed to be a dude bro with a penis, who had only been their whole life, their best friend had been pretending to be a man, now also comes out as a woman and a lesbian. I mean, maybe Trump is the biggest threat to democracy if this is what's going to be occurring after the fact. Okay, guys, thanks for hanging out. Hope you guys have a good Friday. It is a crazy thing to say. And I love how he started it all off by saying he doesn't say this flippantly. Because had he not said that, I might have given him the benefit of doubt. Maybe he just said that flippantly. But he ensures us before saying the very flippant sounding thing that this isn't said flippantly. So he's thought about this. Maybe Mark Halperin's wife came out as lesbian and left him for his best friend. We'll talk to you guys next time. Have a fantastic rest of y'all's day.